Welcome to the System Simplified podcast, where we feature top leaders who share stories on how to successfully systemize a business. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hello, Adi Klevit here with the System Simplified podcast, where we interview top entrepreneurs, founders, and thought leaders about systematizing a business. And this podcast is being brought to you by Business Success Consulting Group. At Business Success Consulting Group, we create custom processes and tailor-made business systems so businesses can thrive and grow. All right, and today's guest is Ruth Domber. Hi, Ruth.
Hi, Adi.
I am so happy to have you as a guest on this podcast.
Thank you for inviting me.
You are very welcome. Ruth is the co-founder of 1010 Optics, which is how would you describe it? Luxury optical boutique in New York,
Correct.
Madison Avenue, 50 Madison Avenue?
Correct. Madison and 26.
Madison and 26. And Ruth, you're a trendsetter, an influencer in the area of luxury optical wear. And you basically are the owner of the business for over 4 decades, which is
Correct.
very impressive. And we met years ago, and I'm just so impressed by your success and by who you are. I wanted you as a guest here. That's why I invited you to be a guest on the podcast, because I want to share it with our listeners, your story, and also your successful actions, because you definitely maintained that success for over 4 decades. And that's, again, very impressive. So well done to you.
Thank you.
You are very welcome. Well, let's start with your story. I mean, how did the business start? Take us back to the history.
I began in optics as a teenager when we all had jobs after school, working for my optometrist as a receptionist. Every year I would learn a little more. I ultimately left him, learned more, decided at some point not to go to law school, that I wanted to open my own practice. I opened 1010 Optics, then as an optometric retail practice. My partner at the time was Dr. Steven Rosenberg. We opened the practice together. He ran the optometry, I ran the optics. And from that launching point, we both did things that were very different from what the industry was doing.
Right. And that is the point. Let's talk about that. So what did you do? You were basically like a disruptor almost. It's like the Netflix and the Blockbuster, right? I mean, you did something that...
Yeah. This was a convergence of many different factors happening at the same time. In the world of optics, it was big block stores, big block businesses selling eyewear to optical shops. And I didn't like the idea of participating in that. Simultaneously, some independent designers, let's call them, independent creators, fabricators of eyewear, started emerging on the scene. So we decided to position ourselves in the market as curators of independent collections, as experts presenting those collections. And when we built our first store, we had 4. We created an environment where the patient would sit almost like in a jewelry store setting at a counter, not access the eyewear. We would bring it to them as experts, and we would bring them eyewear they'd never seen before. And not just generic eyewear. These were beautiful pieces of art, and that resonated with the public.
Right. And that was at the time was not being done. That is something that was
No,
different.
not at all. No. And quickly, word of what we were doing spread. A few other boutiques in the city popped up. I won't say mimicking us because they put their own flavor to it. But from this original seed, the growth of the luxury eyewear market was planted.
Wow. One of the things that you mentioned to me before we start recording is that one of the things that you would do is ignore the industry trends, or the looking at what others are doing, or looking at your competitors. Right. I don't know if they're really competitors, but the so-called or supposed competitors, right? And you just went on your own way and believed in what you had and how you believe that a boutique like that should run, right?
Yes, there were many different factors that contributed to that decision. At the time that we entered the market, was the beginning of separations within the market. Instead of just being eyeglass stores, there became chain stores at the same time. We created the luxury market. There became in and out, serve yourself cheap places to go where, they had $49.99 specials. Because there was so much dissonance going on in the industry and people jumping to find out what markets they belonged in, it became very apparent to me that a lot of this was guesswork. So I chose not to follow any of the magazines, the trends, the forecasters, the talking heads within the industry, because then I would be following what they were thinking. So I put on my proverbial blinders, like you would put on a horse almost. And I stopped looking around and I did what my instincts as a businesswoman were telling me to do. And that was to carve out a space for ourselves that prior to our opening 1010 Optics did not exist. And that gave us a loud voice, the first voice, and gave us a leader's voice. And it stuck.
Wow, that's incredible. So if you look, let's fast forward to now, to the present, and you have 4 stores, very successful. What are some of the keys to your success?
Well, let me just clarify. Now we have 1 store. We have evolved past the 4 stores that we did have. But I would say the primary key to my success is that my handshake is better than a contract. If I say something, I mean it. And if I promise something, I deliver it. And I expect my staff to do the same. And the people I do business with trust me. So that's the foundation on which all of it is built.
That's very important.
So
as a business owner, how do you, because that is super important and people trust you, but you also have staff, right? Because you can't really run a business just yourself. How do you impart that to your staff? How do you make it part of the culture?
One thing is, it's a requirement for the job. When I interview people, ethics are a requirement for the job. You must be honest. You must be trustworthy. You must learn to communicate the way that I expect you to. And you must agree for training that will improve every single one of your skills. Someone who is interested in a position like that, as well as being a skilled optician, someone who is interested in that type of environment will stay because they're comfortable in that type of environment. It means that my staff is going to grow along with the same policies that I will implement.
Absolutely. And that's also where we're going to systems, right? I mean, you have very specific systems that you set in place in your business that your staff is following in order to get consistent results every single time.
That's 100% true. That is necessary. That is one. If people say, what's the secret of your success? Underlying all that will be, we have systems that work, and those systems have been customized by us based on our priorities and I hate to use the word again, but based on our ethics, what it is that's important to us and how we present ourselves. All of our systems are based on that. And all of my staff agrees to the policies of those systems.
Right. When I'm talking to you, Ruth, I'm really thinking about the word integrity, because like what you were explaining, right? I mean, what you were explaining, like when you were starting and you decided, I'm not going to follow the trend of the industry, I have my own. That's your integrity, right? I mean, you said it like, as your instinct.
In my industry, integrity was really kind of iffy. And I hate to say that. When we first started, people would be sold stuff they didn't need, language that they didn't understand was being used. Just the integrity of the industry was not fantastic. It was a little shady. I found that repugnant. And I knew that I would never have a practice or a business where that was allowed through the door. So right. People who would do business with us start to believe over time that, in fact, this is true. Because you have systems that are checks and balances that give your staff the awareness of they're doing something honest, right, correct, And people don't want to leave an environment like that. They,
Absolutely.
yeah, that environment is almost more important than salary. People want to know that when they leave work at the end of the day, they've done the right thing and their employer has supported them in doing the right thing.
Absolutely. And you have one of the things that is so admirable is that you retain your staff. I mean, you have great staff and they stay with you, right?
Yes, my turnover in staff is very low. My interviewing process is thorough, but that's a small part of it. Some of it is I go with my gut, and my gut tells me sometimes you're a good guy, you're a bad guy. Occasionally, over the course of decades, I have been proven wrong, and I correct that quickly. But the people who stay know that they're safe, and that's important for them. They're safe in the environment in which they work. They're safe on many different levels. One is, of course, financially, they're recompensed properly. Their good job, their good deeds, their best efforts are recognized and rewarded. I always tell my staff, when you bring good ideas that work to the table, I will reward you for that. So they are always encouraged to bring ideas to the table that will improve our practice. And when they deliver product, when they serve our clients, our patients, our customers, whatever anyone wants to call them in the industry, I call them our patients. They're only doing what's right. Nothing shady is allowed to happen. And if we're wrong, we do something wrong, we admit it and correct it. They feel good about that.
Absolutely. You build on relationship. It's not a transaction, right? I mean, you treat your patients. It's not a transaction. Okay, we're going to sell you glasses, so we're going to upsell you. We're going to do this, we're going to do that. It's really building those relationships. And so, give an example of a patient.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I just told the patient the other day, she was wondering if I was telling her the truth about how pretty she looked in her new eyewear. And I explained to her that my reasons for her wanting her to get that particular frame were selfish. It was all about me. I wanted her to go out and get compliments so that those compliments would turn into referrals that would come back to my business so we could continue to grow. And if I sent her out of my business with something mediocre or not correct or just, good enough, it wasn't going to help my business grow. I needed her to be an ambassador of goodwill based on the results of the product. For that reason, then she got 2 more pair.
Oh, wow. I mean, that's amazing. I love doing my podcast for this exact reason, because I always get good nuggets. I always learn new things. And that sentence, it's gold, because it's true. It is, and obviously you didn't do it selfishly, but it does help you tremendously, because if you have, especially when it's something that you're so self-conscious about, like your eyewear, like if you go out there and you don't feel good, etc., it's just like, you're never going to say, oh, I went to 1010 Optics to get it. But when you're going there and look amazing and everybody gives you compliments, then it's just like advertising like crazy.
Every single person who walks out is my unpaid ambassador of goodwill to send referrals my way. If we don't do that successfully, we can't stay in business. That's the word of mouth is more important. A personal referral is more important than Google, than Instagram, than Twitter, than Facebook, than print ads. Is someone walking into a room getting a compliment and going, oh my gosh, I have to tell you about the place I just got my glasses at. They were amazing. Nothing tops that. Nothing.
Absolutely. And, it is part of the word of mouth. You can ask people for referrals, but if you do a good job like you do, and you treat your patients, or as you said, customer, clients, whomever, whatever, our listeners, whatever applies to them, then it just goes without saying, right? Because it just happens. Of course, it would be good to ask from time to time, because people have to be reminded. Some people are very fast at writing a critical comment, but they're not necessarily as fast of giving a good review. But when you are wearing it,
yeah, to that end, negative reviews turn out to be extremely helpful for us.
Tell me.
And over the course of years, we have received negative reviews uh, for a variety of reasons, and it's part of life and doing business is a negative review. But to respond to those negative reviews is where you really, really have the opportunity to speak to the public. First of all, you should respond to every single review that you get. That's that's what I believe. But to respond to a negative review is not to respond necessarily to the person who wrote the review. But what you are doing is you have an opportunity now to speak directly to the public in your voice. Whether it's an apology, whether it's an explanation, whether it's come in and let's sit down and talk about this. But the public now can hear you. I think in this world of big box stores and corporate environments, when you have a chance to communicate with your independent individual voice as the face of a business, that opportunity is so valuable, it's never to be underestimated.
For sure, 100%. Okay, so now I want to ask you about the Ruth show, or the boundaries that you set. I mean, that's one of your successful actions as well. So tell me
I learned
more
a long
about
time ago, to separate that there was a need in the beginning as a baby business owner. When we first started, there were no boundaries, and I was socializing with patients a lot and going out with my employees a lot and often, and it was a very transparent and thin situation of where was business and where was personal. Because I do such a personal thing for my business, as I'm always touching people's faces and talking to them about their looks and hearing their life stories. Sometimes it's like going to a therapist when they come to us. They're looking for a repair of some sort. I learned that boundaries were missing. Sometimes you don't know what's missing until you know. And I created boundaries. So the Ruth show is when I'm at work and when my staff is at work, and we are in the public eye, you don't have access to my personal life. You don't have access to the good news and the bad news, unless it's very superficial, never the bad news. You don't have access to a good day or a bad day. You don't have access to a tired day. You just don't, that's not happening. What you do get is the best of what I have professionally. And for that, I would expect in exchange for that, you're in my place of business and we will do business together. When I'm not at work and when I'm not at business, then you get my emotions as they are. Maybe I have a good day, maybe I have a bad day, and maybe I'll communicate that. Maybe I want to spend time with a lot of people. Maybe I need a little quiet, and I can communicate that. But you don't get that when I'm at work, when I'm doing business.
Yeah.
Same for my staff. They're trained the same way. You get the best of me professionally.
And that is very important. But what would you say to people that will say to that, well, you're not being real. I want to be vulnerable. I want to be real. Like, how do you address that?
I choose not to be. My choice, everyone makes their own choice. My choice is when I'm at work, when people come to see me for business, they are coming for a specific reason. They are coming for the best of what I have professionally. If I choose to have dinner with someone, that's a different story. But at 1010 Optics, when you walk in the door, my staff, myself, our environment is to give you the best of what we have. And there, I definitely insist on a boundary.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Wow. Okay. So we covered so many topics here in terms of your success, right? So let's look at them. So it's your integrity and honesty. That's the first thing, being true to your own goals, deciding this is my way and this is the way that I'm going to do stuff. And then really putting the systems in place in the business and having very clear boundaries, right? And really but the main thing is putting the patients first, putting what they need and how to service them the best, but not in terms of taking from you, that is being uncomfortable for you, like putting them first, right? But it's really the service, it's they're building the relationships.
Well, that's our raison d'etre. That is our call. That's our reason for existing. Our reason for existing is to serve the patients, the public, eyewear, eye care, optical care, in a way that I have decided we should run our business. That was very clear in the beginning when we first started, is we are there to do this the way we want to do it. And in doing so, behind us, and you go back to systems again, our business was set up with systems so that we could deliver in that fashion, whether it was communication, whether it's even bookkeeping, billing, purchasing, all of these systems, and employee training is a system as well, which is really critical. That's one of the most important things in a business, is to train your employees to mimic your ethos.
Absolutely. So that is a great word. You have your ethos, you have your culture, you have what's important for you.
Yeah.
That's first. And then
Yes.
you build the systems in order to be able to duplicate that, so you can actually
Yes.
have a result every single time, the same result.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
If I ask you, Ruth, why is having those systems, like why having all your processes documented in training manuals or in policies that are written, why is it so important to have them actually written down?
The worst thing you could do to anyone who works for you is confuse them. That's an ambush of your own business. That's sabotage, ambush. The clearer you are in what it is you expect, the more, the stronger the employee is able to implement what it is that you want. When you leave an employee or anyone on your staff confused about what they're supposed to do and how they're supposed to do it, you've ambushed your own business. The ideal scene would be, my business runs when I'm taking a nap. My business runs when I'm on vacation. My business runs if I'm sick and can't come to work for a month. Everyone knows exactly what they're supposed to do, how it's supposed to be done. I don't get 5 million phone calls with problems to try to solve them. And their instructions are clear and they are comfortable doing them. That's systems.
For sure. And it gives them, again, the stability, the knowingness that the business is going to continue. And that's part of, they, like you said, you compensate them well, you treat them well, but you give them that stability of knowing what to expect. So there is no confusion and there is order.
Yeah. Confusion is the antithesis of a healthy business.
For sure.
You can't do that. And they like it. They're very happy with that, because when there's a problem, then they know how to solve it, because any business has problems throughout the day. You have to be able to solve them within minutes, seconds, hopefully not hours, and proper systems in place are the solutions.
Absolutely. And it also makes the business stronger, right? Because we just, you experience that, like, let's say the pandemic, it's something that is unexpected happens. And then if you are not a strong business, then you collapse. If you're strong, you can change, you can adjust, and you continue to do well.
Absolutely. Yes, I agree with you.
Great. Well, Ruth, thank you so much for being a guest on this podcast and sharing all this wonderful, I would call it pearls of wisdom on how to successfully run a business. And, those are very simple things that people forget, but really believing in it and having that belief and that integrity, it basically, you ride over that in order to accomplish the end result of like a success like yours. So I'm so grateful that you came here and shared those with us.
Thank you for inviting me, Adi. It was really lovely speaking with you and sharing ideas. You're terrific. And the more systems you can help people put in place to run their business, the healthier those businesses will be.
Thank you.
Thank you, Adi.
Thanks for listening to the System Simplified podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.